International news now.
So now we want to move on to another story centering around global environmental politics. But this story is about India's second largest city and its national capital, Delhi, which experienced extreme levels of pollution that were feared to cause serious health problems for the city's inhabitants. So we're going to first watch a short clip from CNN that provides some images that help to capture how bad the pollution in Delhi was over the past couple of weeks. So let's run that clip.
Worse than bad, not the traffic. Actually, there's less of that than normal. It's the air. To help clear it, Delhi's government says these steps are necessary. A temporary ban keeping odd-numbered cars off the road on even days and even-numbered cars off the road on odd days, in an attempt to target a toxic problem, pollution.
When you walk through the streets of Delhi, you can't help but see it, of course, and smell it. But the most disturbing part is you can actually taste it in your mouth. If you're not used to being here, you can feel it burning in your throat. In fact, the city's highest court recently said that living in Delhi was like living in a gas chamber. So those are the conditions that some 20 million people face every single day. There are 9 million registered cars on the streets of Delhi. 1,400 more cars come on the roads each day. So while cars are only part of the problem, every driver is being asked to be part of the solution, and there are even people who are out here to remind you.
Following the rules, Laboni Mitra takes a walk, followed by a ride on a rickshaw. Then there's a 30-minute train ride, followed by a rush through throngs of commuters and another rickshaw ride, all that to get to work.
That's like 1 hour, 15 minutes to reach office.
So is this working?
Without taking emergency action, pollution levels would have been much higher. And so what this scheme has done is to play a role to moderate the high pollution levels.
Clearly, cars are part of the city's pollution problem because of their numbers, because of congestion, because of toxic emissions. But the odd-even rule doesn't cut Delhi's pollution problem in half. There are a lot of exceptions: public vehicles, high-ranking officials, motorcycles, and women traveling alone. It's just a temporary measure, just one of a number of attempts to fight pollution, including a ban on large diesel SUVs and higher taxes on commercial trucks coming into the city.
When it comes to a long-term solution, odd-even exchange wouldn't be enough to move the needle.
No, absolutely not.
There's a consensus that too many other factors contribute to the city's pollution, and the more practical matter on everyone's mind, Delhi's public transit system couldn't handle it.
So for the first time, I think people in Delhi are talking about public transport. And I think that's the pressure that needs to be built on government for the systemic change.
That would be the giant leap. Activists hope it starts with these smaller steps. Alexandra Field, CNN, New Delhi.
All right, so let me make several points here. First, it's difficult to exaggerate how bad the pollution in Delhi got over the past couple of weeks. Pollution levels are often measured according to the concentration of fine particle matter known as PM 2.5 per cubic meter. Microscopic particles, which are smaller than 2.5 micrometers in diameter, are considered particularly harmful because they're small enough to get into the lungs and pass into other organs, causing serious health risks. So the World Health Organization, or WHO, considers a PM 2.5 density above 25 micrograms per cubic meter within a 24-hour period to be unsafe. In Delhi, an emergency level is anything above 300. In 2014, 15, and 16, the average daily level of PM 2.5 in Delhi was 132. So the city averages a level of pollution that is 5 times the level considered unsafe by the WHO. However, over the past couple of weeks in Delhi, PM 2.5 levels have repeatedly reached almost 1,000, which is so high that it's literally off the charts of many pollution monitoring devices. This is not just unsafe. This level is 3 times higher than the level considered hazardous by the WHO. So you had an emergency level of pollution in Delhi that had severe health implications. In response, local authorities adopted a number of policies to simply keep individuals, particularly children, indoors, such as closing schools. They also adopted a number of temporary emergency measures to lessen the smog. For example, local authorities regulated and reduced diesel truck traffic in Delhi, specifically older vehicles that have much worse emission problems than newer vehicles. They also put a temporary ban on construction in the city, which is one of the chief contributors to the microscopic particles that are causing so much harm to lungs and hearts. Now, the two controversial measures, however, were first part of a plan to introduce an alternating odd-even plan for driving personal vehicles. If your vehicle license plates ended in an even number, you could drive your vehicle into the city on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, while those with an even number at the end of their license plate could only drive on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays.
You're going to need to get two license plates, one with
Let's not encourage. Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like the watering ban in the city of Austin, right? So you can only water one day of the week, depending on the last number of your housing address. So also controversial was the banning of fireworks over the Diwali holiday. Not only was this unpopular, but it could have been perceived as targeting certain religious and ethnic groups in India. But as Rob's going to break down in a minute, one of the biggest sources of pollution is crop burning. Burning the old crop in the field to make way for a new crop. Curtailing this practice entails some political trade-offs and battles between rural and urban electoral constituencies.
Yeah. So let me take up the analysis here. First, we need to start with a general principle. And that general principle is that scholars assume that democracies experience less pollution than autocracies because democratic governments will be more responsive to citizen demands for a clean environment. So it makes sense, right, that if you're actually going to rely on votes from individuals and they're coughing on and choking on smog, then you're going to pay an electoral price. However, the experience of India here seems to be an exception to this presumption. And this is not only based on the experience of Delhi over the last couple weeks. Non-democratic China has done much better, arguably, than India in addressing pollution in its large cities over the past few years. Beijing, you've been to Beijing, it's one of the most polluted cities in the world. But it has pollution levels that are about a third of those in Delhi, and there has been much greater aggressive policy to curb pollution in a place like Beijing than in Delhi. But India, and this must be emphasized here, is a functioning long-term democracy. And so it should, if democracy reduces pollution, be a case study in how democracy could be part of the solution rather than the problem. But it's not. Now, why is this? In part, it's due to electoral politics that hinder state action to combat pollution. As we already said, for example, this crop burning is a major cause of Delhi's pollution as farmers in neighboring states, and so these are farmers outside of Delhi in neighboring states, they burn crops in the early fall that raise the pollution levels in Delhi. However, democratically elected politicians in the rural areas, they're reluctant to clamp down on crop burning because they feared the electoral punishment from a powerful farm lobby that controls politics in these regions. So the courts, such as the National Green Tribunal, have established laws recently in neighboring Punjab and Haryana states, right outside of Delhi, to outlaw crop burning. But these laws are not being enforced. Farmers see a ban on crop burning as an additional cost imposed on them to appease urban Delhi. And so there's this urban-rural conflict here. They protest strongly against these measures. They demand that the federal government subsidize their shift to the more expensive alternatives to crop burning. And state governments of any political party don't want to risk cracking down on these farmers who violate these laws because they could be hurt electorally. There's also an ethnic dimension to this. There's ethnic divisions that further complicate India's ability to address this problem. In neighboring regions like Punjab, those who control farming tend to be Sikhs, And their leaders have threatened secession in the past, and they have engaged in some terrorist violence against the Indian state. So cracking down, enforcing these laws on crop burning would exacerbate the tensions between this ethnic group and the Indian state, and potentially reignite demands for greater autonomy and even political violence. So all of this adds up to this kind of counterintuitive conclusion that democracy does not necessarily provide a remedy to this particular environmental problem. And in some ways, it makes finding a solution a bit more difficult.